Although summer is my favourite time of year, my favourite season to actually read in is autumn. The social buzz of summer tends to die down, so I have more time to read. It's also just way colder and darker, and I hate being outside in those conditions, so I am usually inside, preferably with a book. And autumn also gives me back to school feelings, so I just naturally end up reading more. So I thought I'd share with you some of the books I'm planning to read this autumn, because why the hell not? And if you're new here, hi, welcome. I'm Katerina. I make videos chatting about all things books, and if that's your thing, why not subscribe? Alrighty, so the first book I actually want to read is actually a novella because it's like 60 pages or so, and that's Chess by Stefan Zweig. So this story is actually set on board a cruise ship that's on its way to Buenos Aires, and on board is an international chess prodigy. This stirs the interest of the other passengers on board, and they essentially all challenge him to play chess with them as a group. And amongst these passengers, there's one mysterious man that happens to have extraordinary chess skills, but we learn why he has a complicated backstory in why he's so consumed by the game. This novel is heavy in themes of obsession, isolation, and the capacity of the human mind. Chess for me is actually a game that I associate with the aesthetic of dark academia, because dark academia focuses on the pursuit of knowledge in often moody and introspective and quite intense environments, which in my opinion mirrors how some individuals can very obsessively study the game of chess in order to be the best. In this constant study where they learn all the best moves possible and the skills in order to compete with others. I've also heard that this story very much examines this duality of intellect being both a refuge but also a torment. Whilst looking into this book, I also heard that it was great for examining this duality of how intellect can both be a refuge but also a torment. And that as a concept is something that I find so fascinating, and honestly something that I think that any academically inclined person can relate to. But anyway, dark academia just feels perfect for this time of year because, well, despite graduating many years ago now, autumn always gives me this feeling that I'm going back to school and that I should be studying and reading more. So reading a book about obsessively studying over an intellectual game of chess just kind of feels right. And another book that also just screams dark academia, which is one that I'm sure I've spoken about before because I've been very excited for its release, and that's Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. So this is a fantasy novel, and we follow two rival PhD students at Cambridge University who are studying magic, and they're both very academically gifted. However, a forbidden spell gets casted wrong, and their professor slash mentor actually loses his soul and gets sent to the underworld. These two students decide to literally descend into hell in order to get his soul back, and they're literally only armed with their wit and magic. The novel explores themes of rivalry, moral compromises, and the hunger for academic recognition and prestige. It's actually astounding I haven't read this book yet because R.F. Kuang is honestly one of my favourite authors, but it's purely just because I hate reading hardback books, and for some reason this is the only form of books that they publish when they do new releases. So I've recently just bit the bullet and just bought this as an ebook instead because I can't wait a whole year for the paperback version to get released. But anyway, no one quite does dark academia and fantasy quite like this author does. And honestly, fantasy is another genre that I find most enjoyable to read during this time of year as well. I think it's because during autumn, because it's colder and darker and I'm inside more, things tend to feel a little bit more cozy, and I think I then end up getting lost in the escapist element of fantasy a little bit easier. Plus with Halloween coming up, I think it ties quite nicely into the magical and mythical elements that the book has. I am super excited to read this, but I have heard mixed reviews from people regarding this. Some quite big fans of her work have said that it was actually quite a letdown, but I want to read it myself and see, so I shall hopefully give you guys my opinion on this book in the next couple of weeks. And along with dark academia and fantasy, another genre that I very much associate with this time of year is actually gothic fiction. And this is very timely given that the film adaptation of this is going to be coming out soon, and my next book I want to read is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is a classical novel that's set in the Yorkshire Moors, which, if you couldn't tell by my accent already, is where I'm from, so represent, we love Yorkshire being mentioned. And this story follows the tumultuous relationship between a man who was taken in by a very rich family when he was an orphan and also this family's daughter. However, class inequality in England strikes again because this daughter actually chooses to marry another man due to his social status. And this heartbreak causes our initial love interest to wreak havoc, causing chaos for generations to come for both families. Themes include love, class, and the cyclical nature of suffering. Honestly, I just really want to read this book before the film comes out because I'm such a believer in reading the source material before adaptations if you can. I know a lot of people kicked off with Jacob Elordi's casting because I know that the love interest of this should not be white, but the trailer really kind of gripped me, but maybe that's because I like Charlie XCX's music and the song that was in the trailer was a banger. Who knows? But honestly, I really love reading Regency romance classics and Gothic fiction around this time of year anyway. The wild and windswept Yorkshire moors honestly just feel so atmospheric, especially with the weather getting moodier and darker this time of year. I also associate autumn with the season of change and decay and things ending, which I very much think reflects other themes that happen in this book in terms of love and loss. And it also just seems very reflective and melancholic, and I think autumn is honestly the perfect time to read books like this, so I'm very much looking forward to this one. And keeping up with the genre of Gothic fiction that's very heavy in romance, the next book I want to read is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This story follows a young woman who ends up marrying a very wealthy widowed man, and she ends up moving into his grand estates with him. However, while she's there, she finds herself overshadowed by the ghostly presence of her husband's first wife, called Rebecca, especially because her memory is preserved by the creepy housekeeper that lives there. But soon she finds out the truth behind Rebecca's life and death, which ultimately causes her to question her marriage and also her sanity. The novel explores themes of identity, jealousy, and the lingering attachments we have to the past. I actually saw the film adaptation for this many years ago before Armie Hammer came out as a cannibal, which I honestly do not think is talked about enough. I hope that the book is very similar to the film, but I really liked the gothic feel that this story had. It had this very dark and brooding tone, which I honestly think mirrors Autumn's eerie mood. And with Halloween coming up too, I just like the idea of secrets and ghosts and a haunting past just tend to go hand in hand with this. On a more introspective level, I feel like this novel also explores this idea of change within one's identity. And I know this protagonist goes on quite a journey of self-discovery and change as she adjusts to her new marriage, which I also just think complements the season of autumn because there's a lot of change and reflection that comes with this time of year as well. Plus, I really like the film, so why not read the book? That seems like a good enough reason for me. In a similar vein, another book I want to read soon that also has this idea of being haunted by the dead is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is historical fiction that's set in Ohio just after the Civil War, and we follow a slave who has since escaped slavery, but she's very much haunted by the past, including her daughter's death. And one day, a mysterious woman arrives called Beloved, and she seems to embody the spirit of her lost child. The main character therefore has to confront all the trauma she's faced and the memories that she's since repressed. And this novel very much focuses on themes of motherhood, survival, and the horrors of slavery. I've literally only heard amazing things about this author and particularly this book. This is probably my heaviest book on this list, but I do enjoy historical fiction and this has been on my TBR for ages. So whilst I can't really explain why this is an autumnal read, it's purely just a book I want to read soon. I also think with the current political state of the world, it's necessary to read books like this, showing the struggles that people of colour have endured whilst we continue to go down a path of ignorant beliefs seems kind of timely. It's so hard to talk about these kind of things on YouTube without getting demonetized, so I guess I'll just have to leave that statement there. But I'm very much looking forward to reading this, and I also think that the whole idea of ghosts slash spirits embodying people is kind of Halloweeny and probably good for this time of year. However, my next novel is probably more on the fantasy horror side, and that's Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano, Cordova. This story follows a mother where, after her 11-year-old son dies, she turns to methods of folklore in order to keep him alive or to keep his memory going. This is going to sound really weird, and I haven't read the book yet to fully understand what happens, but this is very much intriguing. She cuts out a piece of his lung and she feeds it and cares for it, and it basically grows into a creature which she names Monstrilio. She secretly keeps it in her house, and whilst initially it was very similar to her son, it grows to have its own instincts and impulses, which obviously causes problems. Whilst my other books I've mentioned are more psychological horror, I also want to read something that's more gory horror. I just find them a bit more intense, and it sounds really weird, but I really like books with the ability to shock me. I'm generally super impressed with a book when it's so gruesome that I have to physically put the book down and walk away for a little bit to kind of get some space. American Psycho by Bret, Easton, Ellis is probably the best book for this. I don't think I'm ever going to recover from that. But yes, again, with Halloween coming up, I like something that's actually more scary and shocking, and this book seems very in line with autumn. I know that this book also explores the themes of grief in great detail and the lengths that people go to in order to keep hold of a loved one. Because with this time of year in autumn, we see a lot of nature dying, so I think it's quite timely because we do see a lot of death and decay this time of year. But I am excited to read this because I've heard so many people just say that it's so surreal, so hopefully it's something that I enjoy. And my next book is also kind of gory, but it's less in a scary way, and that's Anatomy by Dana Schwartz. So this is a gothic fiction novel, which as you know, I love. And this is set in the 19th century in Edinburgh. And we follow a woman who aspires to be a surgeon, but this is during a time when women are barred from practicing medicine. But despite being denied entry into medical school, she meets a resurrection man who helps her study anatomy by supplying bodies for dissection. They basically go about robbing graves together, but in the process, they uncover secrets that are part of a dark conspiracy. It explores themes of societal restraint, the pursuit of knowledge, as well as love in unexpected circumstances. Firstly, I just think that the cover for this book is stunning. It's so clever and I love the symbolism of the heart. I also just think that this is a perfect atmospheric book. It has a moody and gothic setting filled with graveyards and secrets and danger. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of death and decay in nature around this time of year, which I think very much fits well here with all the death and decay also going on. I also haven't read a love story in a while because honestly, me and romance books don't usually get on. I find more misses than hits, purely because I have a low tolerance for cringe and a lot of romance books tend to ick me out. It's my own problem, I know. But I'm hoping with the horror and a more serious setting, I'll actually enjoy the romance a little bit more in this book. I know how weird that sounds, don't at me, but we shall see. I'm willing to give it a try and form an opinion on it from there. And finally, last but not least, the last book on my list here is a little bit of a different one, and that's Stoner by John Williams. From what I've read about this, it's a profoundly quiet novel about a humble and unassuming man called William Stoner. And the story basically follows his whole life from being born to a poor farming family in Missouri all the way to his career in academia. But the novel mainly focuses on the struggles in his life, including his loveless marriage, his unfulfilled ambitions, and his personal troubles. However, despite these disappointments in life, he finds meaning in literature and teaching. And the story is essentially a meditation on the beauty of ordinary life and the value of intellectual passion. I do find autumn a more quiet and introspective time of year, so I really do enjoy reading more contemplative books, ones that look at the meaning of life, not always in a positive way, but seeing the melancholy that life can also bring. I won't lie, I am a little bit skeptical about this book because it's one of those books that talk about how great books are. And sometimes I find that a little on the nose because you're kind of banking on an audience who already love books to like a book about books. Do you know what I mean? But I have heard good things about this, so I am very much willing to give this a read and see what I think. It also explores themes of resilience and learning to endure things to get to the other side, which for someone who, like me, who gets quite seasonally depressed during this time of year, I need to read things about endurance because I struggle through the colder seasons and I need all the resilience I can get to eventually get through to the warmer seasons of spring. And on that note, those are all the books I want to read in autumn. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you have, what did you think of them? I like to have realistic expectations of when I actually read books. But if you haven't read any of these, please let me know what's on your autumn TBR list if you have one. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please drop a like down below if you did. It really helps me out. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I make videos chatting about all things books. Feel free to also follow me on my socials. I have a Goodreads where I update in real time what I'm reading, and also feel free to follow me on my Instagram. I post more personal stuff on there, but I also post books as soon as I finish reading them, letting you know what they're about and what I rate them out of 10. And once again, thank you all to my returning subscribers for being here. I love you and appreciate you all so, so much. I'm quite struggling to make videos recently because I've been so slammed at work, but I'm really trying to at least make one every 2 weeks. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit quiet on the socials. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I shall hopefully see you next time. Bye!